Welcome to Introspection, the podcast about moving from grief to growth. I'm Amy Lindner Lesser, your host. Introspection started out as a podcast about hospitality, innkeeping, and innkeepers. After about a year, I realized that my life and interests have morphed from hospitality to helping others navigate from grief and loss to growth and living. In this new version of Introspection, I will be talking about my personal experiences with loss, and there are quite a few, what I've learned along the way through my professional training, as well as from my coaching experiences. I'll also be bringing in guests to share interesting ideas. So grab a beverage, find a comfy place, take a deep breath, and listen in. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me again today. This episode of Introspection, Grief to Growth is going to be a really different one. It's a very personal episode. I want to share with you the journey that I've been on for quite a while. As many of you know, my late husband and I purchased a 20-room bed and breakfast in the Berkshires back in 1996. He passed away in 1999, and I continued operating the inn. And I raised my children as a single parent. I took care of my mother and stepfather as the good daughter who is a people pleaser, and had employees through the years. COVID hit, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts had all of the B&Bs shut down because we were not considered an essential service. Well, I had employees that I didn't want to let go. And so I made the effort to keep them on and found work for them to do. And it cost me a lot of money and time. And yet I did it because I cared about them and I cared about my business. And I started doing Facebook Lives, which were really tough for me, to keep our guests informed of what was going on and to let them know when we were able to open and that we were there for them. And we were still holding an occasional retreat at the inn. And in December of 2020, we hosted a retreat for a woman who is a sensei, a shaman. She does shamanic journeying, but I want to make it clear that it's substance-free, no ayahuasca, no drugs, just using our imaginations to journey. And we did a journey, and in my journey, I saw myself sitting in a square someplace in Mexico. I couldn't identify where it was, but I just knew it was familiar and I had been there. And after doing the journey, we talk to each other and share what the journey's like. And so I told everybody, and I said, it was a great dream and it's never going to happen. I had at that time a very brand new granddaughter who was nearby. I had a grandson. I wasn't going anywhere. I wanted to be around my family and my friends. And I just sort of pushed it off. 2 weeks later, the front doorbell rang, and it was a realtor who said, I have people who are interested in buying your inn. Are you looking to sell? And I said, no, I really love what I'm doing. I love my guests. I'm not looking to sell. And then the voice in the back of my head said, hey, wait a minute. You've heard this before. Every business is for sale if the price is right. And so I said to the realtor, I said, bring your buyers by. I'll talk to them. I'll show them around the inn. And they're free to make an offer. And, but if it's good, fine. If it's not, I'll send them on their way. So right after Christmas, they came, looked at the inn, made an offer. And I said, thanks, I'm not interested. You're not even in the ballpark. 10 minutes later, they came back with a better offer. And I said, well, you're getting closer, but no, I love what I do. And then on that Sunday, I got a phone call from the realtor with an offer that really was too good to refuse. And when I thought about it, I realized that I was going to be 65 that summer. Now you all know how old I am. And I also said, it's time to think about maybe what else I want to do. And so I said, you know what? It wasn't a fire sale offer. It was time to start a new chapter in my life. So I accepted the offer. And as you may or may not know, 3 months later, I packed up more than 25 years of my things, my mother and stepfather's things, the stuff that my adult children had left when they moved out, and found a house and moved closer to my younger daughter in New York State. It was a great move, but I said, I'm still too young. I'm not really ready for retirement. I had the problem of not knowing anybody where I moved, and COVID was still in full bloom and people weren't doing things in person. So it was very hard to meet people. I went to a retreat where I decided that since I had become a life coach, what I would do, because I really support and love the independent innkeeping community, was that I thought I would provide coaching services for innkeepers to help them rediscover joy in innkeeping. And so I started to do that, and that's how introspection came about. One day I looked up and I have this, what I think is a beautiful painting that I bought from an Israeli artist who was part of a painting group of Israeli and Arab women. And it's called the Olive Tree Project, an olive tree for peace. And so they're hoping that by painting together, they get to know each other on a personal level and can start to grow relationships that let these women from opposing views see that there are things in common. Well, this painting just spoke to me. It's a painting of a landscape. And then on the landscape are, it's like looking through a window with curtains, lace curtains that she actually, I guess, glued little butterflies from the lace panels, and those are on it. There are some stones on it. There's bark from a tree. And I was sitting at my desk, and that painting hangs behind my computer screen on the wall. And I looked at the painting, and it's always made me feel very calm. And then I looked out my window, and I realized that I had created or manifested that painting. Not everything in the painting, but most of that painting. I had a window that had green grass, that had lace curtains, and I was looking out on that thing. So I went, wow, okay, I can do this. And then I realized that working with innkeepers, while it's still a passion of mine, was not necessarily a passion of theirs. And in August of last year, my best friend of 44 years passed away. Liz and I met our first day of graduate school. We were both going to school to be social workers. She had tripped and fell, and I picked her up off the ground, and we were friends since then. And I don't think there were many days, you could probably count them on two hands, that in 44 years we didn't speak to each other. Her passing this summer, while a huge loss for me, she was often the voice of reason with me after Steve passed away. She was there to support me. She was there to support me through my mother's passing, my stepfather's passing. What I realized was she gave me the gift of becoming a grief coach and helping people get through grief and loss. And not just getting through, but completing the loss. So that turned me on this path. This week is a really special week. On Thursday is the 5th anniversary of my mother's passing. As a Jewish person, we call it a yahrzeit. Some people call it a thaniversary, Thanos for death. Others, a deathiversary. And this Friday, is Steve's birthday. He would have been 72 years old. Well, meanwhile, about 2 months ago, I got an email from a woman who I knew from the Berkshires, who is an artist, a life coach, a performer, a beautiful writer and speaker, and just beautiful soul. And it was, hi, I'm going to be offering 2 women's retreats for women over 50 in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. Well, some background information for you is that I have been coming to Mexico since I was, I think, 13. I think I was in 7th grade. My parents brought me to Mexico on a summer trip, family trip. And then the following summer, I came and lived with a family for the 2 months of the summer. In college, I came back with my parents and we explored other areas of Mexico. And then after going through a period of struggle with infertility, Steve and I found out that he had a cousin who was married to a Mexican national who happens to be a physician. And his mother said, why don't you call and see if they can help you? Long story short, both of our daughters were born in Mexico. And for each adoption, we spent 5 weeks living with a new family for us. They have become the most precious, dear family. And so those were 2 more months, wonderful months of being in Mexico. We had an exchange student when our older daughter, Nina, was 2, who came from Mexico. And we would speak Spanish to Nina. She would answer us in English, but I got to practice my Spanish. And then when we adopted Maya, the process had changed and we had to go up to Chihuahua, and we stayed with Norma's family while we did that paperwork. And then when our girls were younger, I think the last time we were back in Mexico was probably about 32, 33 years ago, when Maya was 2 or 3. And it's been a long time. And I've always had just this special place. I remember Maya once telling me, Mom, you're more Mexican than I am. So when I saw this retreat and I saw it was this week, and I saw it was in Mexico, in a place in Mexico where I had never been, I had this feeling that I had to make it happen and that I had to complete a circle that started, well, maybe when I was 12, maybe it's his life, and maybe, I had a life here someplace in the past in Mexico. But definitely it started or restarted when I had the shamanic journey about being here. And so I just kept saying all the things that I could say about how I was going to make this happen, and how when this week was looking iffy, I just kept saying, I'm going to be in Mexico for this week. I know it's going to happen because the universe wants it to happen for me. And here I am. I'm sitting in a beautiful courtyard in an old hacienda that has become a 6 guest room guest house with wonderful women who are supportive and all looking to grow and share their experiences. When my plane landed after an extremely long day, my first flight was at 5 something in the morning, and then I had 2 following flights. So as we touched down in Querétaro, I started to cry, and I'm going to get emotional now. I just had a feeling deep inside that I was coming home. At some soul level, this is home. And to be here on this special week with my mother's yahrzeit and Steve's birthday, when I had shared this country with both of them quite a few times, is so special to me. And I hope for all of you that you have the opportunity to make an experience like this happen for you. It doesn't mean going to Mexico. It doesn't mean travel. It means just finding a way to complete the cycle. And the crowning jewel was as my driver got and as he turned the corner for the street that this guest house is on, I saw a woman who from the back looked like my mother, looked exactly like her. And I was like, oh my God, that's a sign. It's a sign from the universe that I'm in the right place. The day before I left to come here, so that would have been on Saturday, I was looking out my back window and there were two cardinals, a male and a female, who just wouldn't leave this one area of my backyard. And it's said that cardinals are the presence of loved ones who have passed. And I believe it was my loved ones. I believe it was Steve and my mother and Liz and maybe other family members that were coming to give me confirmation that this was the step that I needed to take. It's also a perfect step for me. Last weekend, I did an intensive 4-day training program in the grief recovery method. So I've been certified to run groups and do individual one-on-one sessions using their method. And with that, we did the exercises to complete one of our losses. And I worked on my relationship with my mother. So seeing her doppelganger here was just such positive confirmation that this is good, that I've completed everything. I have no unfinished business with her anymore. I'm grateful for the wonderful things in my life from her. And I've apologized for anything I did that may have hurt her. And I've forgiven her for what she did intentionally or unintentionally that hurt me. So here I am sitting in this garden. You may or may not be able to hear the water in the fountain. The top of the fountain is like a basket with bougainvillea in this hot pink, beautiful color that's so Mexican, so alive. This morning there was a beautiful gold-colored butterfly that was right down on the ground next to me when we were meeting. And I bent down because it looked almost like it was a bronze or a piece of bronze or metal. It didn't look real. And I went to touch it to pick it up, and all of a sudden it started fluttering. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was a real butterfly. It was a jewel and a great way to start my first full day here in San Miguel de Allende. In concluding this, I really and truly, from the bottom of my heart, want to wish you a coming home, a coming to completion, and the joy that I'm feeling. A little thing that's sort of cute is there's a box of tissues next to me, and there are sayings on it. Oops, let's see. It's very Mexican looking, and it says, this one says, make this day count or important. On the other side, to me, it says, today is a good day to smile. I love that. I mean, especially when you're like sneezing or whatever. And then it's, if you believe it, you can create it. And the last one on the box is, I am a limited edition. And we all are. There's nobody like us in this world. So remember that. And have some fun today. Put the joy in your life, even when you're grieving, even when you've got loss, because joy can exist on the side of grief. Celebrate your life like they do here in Mexico, and celebrate the Day of the Dead with monarch butterflies and gifts for those who have passed on into the spirit world. So I'm going to leave you with that. And if I can be of service to you or anyone you know, follow the links, and I look forward to working with you. Take care and have a wonderful day. I love you. If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner Lesser.